How audacious. And how are we considering a response in the United States? There is chatter about more sanctions. Well, I will give you, Mr. President, an idea that will send a signal to the Iranian government, and for that matter, the Iraqi government, that we will not tolerate those kinds of plots directed at our allies to be delivered on American soil. I'll give you an idea. Delist the MEK and give them the protection you promised them years and years ago. Just a couple of weeks before, we watched as Western diplomats departed the UN Assembly, as Ahmadinejad chose to once again deny the events of 9/11 that occurred in my country, as he has done in the past with the Holocaust. Accusations that continue to demonstrate that he is, and the mullahs, are morally, ethically, and democratically out of step in the world in which they live. The world would be a much better place. The world would be a much safer place if someone like, let's say, Mariam Rajavi represented the Iranian people at the next General Assembly session of the United Nations. For years we have tried to negotiate with Iran, and we negotiate, and while we negotiate, they imprison, they torture, and they murder. We negotiate, yet they continue to move inexorably toward a non-peaceful nuclear capability. We negotiate, yet Iran's foreign minister publicly applauded the most recent Camp Ashraf massacre. Iran's agenda is about disruption, destabilization, disharmony, and death. My country is concerned about the innocent civilians in Libya and the city of Benghazi. We should be equally even more concerned about the innocent civilians at Camp Ashraf, because they surrendered our weapons to us, and we promised to protect them. It's time we delist them and provide them the protection we promised many years ago. We will never affect a change in this rogue nation's behavior or goals. It's impossible to think we can negotiate with this group. Regime change is our only hope of ever seeing a democratic Iran. And that potential for democracy rests within an opposition group pledged to democratic reform, one that has endured massive genocidal murders for decades, the MEK. It is time to heed the calls for delisting. It is time to move to action. In my country, the American people know that we'll always find strength in multilateral partners, in the European Union, in NATO, in the United Nations, in our true friends and allies, in a true culture of cooperation. And that, on this issue, is extremely important. Because we know that any affront to life and liberty requires a swift and global response. It is not always easy, this whole notion of collective agreement, particularly when all these countries must attend to their own best interest. Gathering with one voice on any issue does have its challenges. But on the issue of terror against free people, innocent people, on issues that offend the Western world's collective value for human life and the rule of law, on those issues, we know that we can and we must unite. The Iranians are on the wrong side of history. We must assure that. We know that the will of the MEK has been tested by murder, oppression, and terror. Tested, but unbelievably never, ever broken. Tested, but unbelievably still as strong today as it's been for decades. All of us must continue to be just as strong. We must be strong in volume and in will and in clarity. It has been said in times of moral crisis, there is no place for neutrality. One must take a stand. One must speak out. And actually, not one, but many. This is no time for indecisiveness, neutrality, or inaction. We know that great powers can work together to do great things. It will be our mutual commitment to our cause that will help us achieve our mutual goal, the delisting of the MEK, the full and respected invitation to the MEK into the family of free peoples.